Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Technolive. It's been blooming ages. It genuinely has. It's been like, what, 3, 4 weeks? 5, maybe? I can't even remember. I think the last stream we did was, at the start of March. So yeah, it's been quite a while. Apologies from that. Life's been busy. I've been doing a lot of teaching with teachers. I've been marking a lot of exams. In fact, that's what I've been doing today. And my goodness, that take a long time. My word. But yeah, back to Technolive. And, well, there's not really much to update about. It's ticking along nicely. Technocamps is nice and busy as always. Oh, there is a little bit of an update. The beautiful weather. I don't know about you lot, but down here in Swansea, the weather has just been splendid. It's been so enjoyable. And I've had my first seedlings come through today. I have had 2 radishes sprout, which I'm really excited about because I only put them in last Sunday. And already they're growing up nicely. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just checking over them as if they'd have changed in the past 10 minutes. They haven't. I've just been obsessively checking them because I like my seedlings. Speaking of growing stuff, we're going to have a go at growing our knowledge of GameMaker today. Because, as it says on the title... Oh, sorry, just checking my audio, because that's not behaving nicely. Ooh. Oh, yeah, I need to tear down my whole audio system. It's just messing up and playing up, and half of it I blame Windows for, but the rest of it's just me neglecting to look after it properly. But yeah, sorry. Side note, we're going to take a look at making a platformer in GameMaker. Now, first things first, I've cheated quite a bit, actually. I've actually used someone else's code. So, this is... We're not starting from scratch today. We're starting from a very basic bit of gravity code, which I got from this tutorial here. And I'm going to put a link to it. This is Sean Spalding's page. It's linked to from the official YoYo Games GameMaker tutorials. And the reason I've come in having done this first, or at least part 1 of this tutorial series, is because I've been trying for a while to think of some good gravity code. I've been working on a little bit, but it's just finding the time to research properly. And as such, the results I've produced myself are not as good or as smooth as this code. And instead of just passing off as my own stuff and plagiarizing it, no, I'm going to credit the creator of this. So this is from the GameMaker tutorial on making a platformer in GameMaker language. I'll just go over what we got so far. If you haven't looked at that tutorial yet, it might be worth looking at that first if you want to actually make the game yourself. But if you just want to stick around, enjoy some cool times as we, create a game somehow out of this code, then that's up to you. But just to kick us off, Sean Spalding's series teaches you to set up your variables first. So we've got the current horizontal speed of the player, the current vertical speed of the player, what speed they're allowed to fall at. I've set that to 0.8 because it's like 0.81, the speed of gravitational acceleration. But the thing about these variables is you can play around with them when you want to. I've set a walk speed and I've set a jump speed. Okay. And the GameMaker tutorial from YoYo Games goes through this code step by step, explaining what each bit does and using it. So here on the first line, this is in a step event. So this happens once every game frame. But here we are checking whether or not the A key on the keyboard has been pressed, and we're setting that to a variable. Then we're checking whether the D key has been pressed, and we're setting that to a variable. Then we're checking if the space bar has been pressed, and we're setting that to a variable. Then we work out which direction we want to go. So if you press the right key, movement will say go right. If you say the left key, the movement will say go left. If you do the right key and the left key at the same time, you won't go anywhere. Which is pretty much what that line of code's doing. Then whichever direction we're going, we do the walk speed. That makes the horizontal speed. And then we take our current vertical speed and we add on to it how much we should fall each time. However, if we are standing on a wall object and the jump key is pressed, then we take the jump speed away from the vertical speed. Ooh, something's opened up on my other screen. Hello. Oh, it's the GameMaker manual. I must have right-clicked. Oh well, that'll be useful for me later. This is the nitty-gritty of Sean's code. Is it Sean? Have I gotten the name wrong already? It is Sean. But here we're checking whether or not we are colliding with a wall object, either on the left or the right of our character. And if we are, then we make sure the character can't go through it. And if we're not, then we add some sideways movement. And the vertical speed is exactly the same thing, except it only checks whether your character is standing or hitting a wall with their head. So, go check out that tutorial series. It's much better than I could explain it. I'd love to be able to go through my own code here, but I'm still researching it at this point. GameMaker's changed a lot from when I used to use it. Yeah. Not necessarily for the best, but that's a different story. So, what does our game look like at the moment? Well, we've got a wall and we've got a player. Those are both objects. Both of them are wearing some sprites. And I've put that all in a room. And all the code is just in the player character. So what do we have so far? Let me load it up. This is the bit that takes the time. And here we are. Welcome to my really ugly game. So I can move around and I can jump nicely. Whee! I've also set up some views. I was going to go through how to do that, but maybe we'll come to that in a bit. But as we can see, we've just got a big old wall and two smaller walls. The reason I've done these stretched, if I go into room view. Oh, this is my room, by the way. It's long. The reason I've done these objects stretched is because when you are creating a game, you want to use as few objects as possible. The fewer objects you have, the faster, the game won't struggle to run on slower computers. Okay? If you're on a slower computer and you've got lots of objects, you might end up with a bit of lag in your game. So, to reduce the number of walls, instead of just doing... Oh, I wanted to resize that, not do that. Instead of doing lots of walls along the bottom, like this. Wall, 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 wall. That's a lot of objects. So instead, I've just done one wall and just made it really chunky. There we are. Whilst we're on here, I might as well talk through how I've set up my views. So over on the left-hand side of the room editor, I've made the width of the room 4,000, which means it's a very, very long room. And we'll be adding some stuff in there. But to make it so that it doesn't create a really long and wide window, I've enabled viewports. So I've turned viewports on. And then I've made viewport 0. I've made it visible. I've told it how big I want the camera to be and how big I want the window on my computer to be when the game runs. Then I told it to follow the player character. Then I gave it these values. So horizontal border is how many pixels between the left-hand side and your player should be. And the right-hand side as well. And then the vertical border is how far from the top or the bottom your player should be. These both determine how far the player moves before the view moves. And the speed basically says how fast the view will move. But that's extra stuff. Let's get on and actually do something today. And what I thought I'd start off with, well, we might get to the art a bit later, but I want to add a little bit of functionality. Thought let's add in an enemy, actually. Oh, good use of actually twice. That didn't sound natural at all. Actually. But let's create an enemy. So I'm going to go to sprites. I'm going to create a sprite. At the moment, I'll just open the player character sprite, for example. I'm doing some really basic stuff. Whenever I design a game in GameMaker, I always do this. I make some useless sort of placeholder images so I can get the gameplay working first. And once I'm happy with the gameplay and I'm happy with the actual programming behind it, then I go in and I start creating the character, making things look nice, drawing things nicely. But I always just make these boring blocks first. And that mostly works for me. So let's make another boring block. This is going to be a seeker enemy. It's just an enemy designed to follow the player when they're in range. It's going to be a sprite. I'm happy with the resolution. We'll just go in and edit image. And as I said, I'm going to do this really, really fast, simple, basic, and ugly. Okay, and let's designate it a red for danger. And let's fill that with black. And then let's put in some white text just saying baddie. Because that's all I need. Yeah. There we are. It's just so I know what it is without having to draw it first. But with that sprite all created, and of course you could spend lots of time on that. I'm not going to. But with that sprite created, I could go over to objects. Let's create an object. And this is going to be our seeker enemy. OBJ for object. And we'll give it the enemy sprite. And there we are. So, oh, ow. Sorry, that's my bones crunching. That's never a nice thing to hear on stream. That's what you get for sitting in a chair all day marking exams. Anyway, what I was going to say was what we want this enemy to do is you want it to move towards the player when the player is in a certain range. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to get the enemy to check every frame whether or not the player is in range. It's not the most efficient way, but it's relatively neat to do. And if we're checking something every frame, we're going to need a step event. So I'm going to go to Add Event, Step, and we're just going to go for a normal step. And it's in this code that we're going to, well, check for the player. So I'm going to do a little @desk for @description just to describe what this code is doing. So checking for player, or let's change that, moving to player. And if I put that in, as you can see, it updates over in our event, so I know what each event is doing. Okay. The very first thing we need to do is say if the player is in range. So if... Now, this is something I'm very pleased about. There's a lovely little built-in function that works out distances for you. I'm incredibly pleased because usually on this channel I do a lot of MakeCode Arcade. Now, MakeCode Arcade does not tell you the distance to an object, which, unless you want to get into some funky maths, is hard to do on your own. But luckily, GameMaker will do it. We'll do distance underscore to... Oh, it's already popped up. Object. And we're looking for play char obj, as I called it. Now, this might cause problems if we had more than one player character, but I can't think of a game that does. Oh yeah, unless you're doing co-op. Anyway, that's a later problem to think about. We'll just leave it as this nice simple code for now. Say if the distance to the object is less than, let's pick a certain distance in pixels. Let's say 200 pixels. If the distance to the player character is less than 200, open squiggly bracket, type something, close squiggly bracket, and that error disappears. Nice. So what do we want to do if the player character is within the range? Well, we're going to tell our seeker enemy object to move towards point. I just press tab then to autofill it from the suggestions. If we look at the bottom of this window, it tells us what this function expects. It expects an X, so a horizontal location, a Y, so a vertical location, and a SP, which I'm going to assume means speed. So we're going to get it to move. If we want it to move towards a player character, we need to find out the X and Y location of a player character. So play char obj dot X will give us the X location of the player character. Oh, I've just spotted. No, never mind. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. If we do play char obj.y, it gives us the Y position. And then if I pop another comma in, I can now put in a speed. When I first had a little play around with this, I put in the speed 20. We'll see what problems that causes in a bit, but yeah, we're gonna move towards the X location of the player character and the Y location of the player character at a speed of 20 pixels per whatever. Let's see that in action. So first things first, I'm going to go to my room. Sounds like I've been told off there. Go into my room. I'm going to go to my room and think about what I've done. And I'm going to think about adding an enemy into this world. So let's find Seeker Enemy, the object. Let's drag it in. Let's just put it there. So we should jump up the stairs and find the baddie. Let's give that a go. Let's run that. Waiting for it to compile. Lovely. So here's my character, just strolling along, having a lovely day. Ah! And the baddie's come to attack me. Okay, so for a couple of issues here. First things first, on your screen, it looks like the baddie's staying pretty much still. Whereas on my screen, the baddie's just jittering around all over the place. The reason why is I'm streaming this to you lot at 30 frames per second. Whereas for me, my game is running at 60 frames per second. So on one of the frames, my baddie is to the left of the player. And on the other frame, it's to the right of the player. But if my streaming software is only taking a picture of one of the frames where it's on the left, then you'll only see it on the left, or you'll only see it on the right. But for me, it's jittering around all over the place. It's going absolutely mad. Second problem, the top left corner of my baddie is what's going towards the player. It's not going... It's kind of offset to the player. It's just kind of hanging around in the wrong place. And we can fix that by changing the origin. So before we fix anything else, I'm going to change the origin and we'll see how that behaves. So, what do I mean by that? Well, let's get rid of all this gubbins. And let's open up our player character and our Seeker Enemy sprites. So I've opened up both the sprites. Now, when I was creating the player character sprite, I followed the tutorial, and the tutorial suggested that the origin of the player should be in the middle. Okay, so the origin, as in the center, is in the exact middle. Usually when you create a sprite, it goes by default to the top left. So, for the player sprite, I had mine set to middle center. For my baddie, I had it set to top left. And if I change this one to middle center, it should fix that problem. Ooh. We'll see. We'll run this first, and then I need to go check something because it's anyway. Okay, so that's a bit better. The baddie is now more centrally sitting on the player. Okay, I'm just going to go check something. I'll be right back and we'll fix the next problem. My apologies. Sorry about that. There's a really strong smell of melting plastic here, and I was a bit worried something was on fire. But I guess not. I mean, we'll find out if my smoke alarm just goes off in the middle of this, but oh well. Apologies. Yeah, sorry. Let's close down the sprites, because we wanted to fix one more thing. It was in the seeker enemy object. We wanted to change the speed that the seeker enemy moves towards the player, because 20 was incredibly fast. I'm going to put that down to 0.1 now, because in my testing I found 0.1 was a really menacing speed. It was really scary and intimidating. But it did look good. So let's give this a run. Compile, compile, compile. So here's my game again. I'll leave the code up if you want to see it, but my character goes running along. As soon as it gets within 200 pixels, you see the baddie slowly moving towards the player. I love the speed that it... I know it's slow and it's easy to avoid, but something about that is terrifying. It's like a kind of, it's like a boss in Elden Ring, slowly sneaking up on you. Not even sneaking, just, I need to make a game with slow enemies for some reason. But isn't that cool? Interestingly, it will go through walls at the moment, as seen there. Well, you could probably fix that by adding an if statement saying if touching wall, don't do the move, but if not, do the move. But that's something to mess around with later. I do also quite like the idea of it following you through walls. But anyway, that's a little bit extra. Let's have a go now. No, I don't want to do knockback. We'll save that to a later date. Or we don't want to do the player getting damaged. Let's do instead... Let's do a way of getting rid of that enemy first. Let's fire a projectile. So, what we're going to go ahead and do is make a sprite for it, of course. So, sprite. I'm going to make the size of this one a little bit smaller because you don't want a projectile that's too big. So we'll make the height of it 16 pixels. And we'll make the width of it... yeah, let's keep it at 16. Let's keep it both 16. I'm just deciding... I was having to think about what kind of projectile do I want. Do I want a bullet, an arrow, or... I don't know. But I think I'll go for a sort of roundish musket ball kind of thing. This is going to be my... let's just call it bullet SPR. Let's edit the image. And again, we're going to be boring. Just make it something simple. Not even that neat. I'm already putting too much effort into it, but you know what I'm like with pixel art. And well, we might not be able to fit any text in there. No, let's turn that white and let's make the size like 5. Just put a B for bullet. That'll do. It's not exactly the neatest B I've ever seen. I will just leave it like that. It's just a placeholder again. Something just to get it in the game without us having to put too much design work in. But there's the bullet. And let's make an object for it. Object. And let's make this bullet object. Give it the right sprite. Ooh, I will do one thing, actually. I will do one thing. I forgot to set the origin point of the bullet. So at the moment, it'd be in the top left, which means that if our character had a gun, it wouldn't fire out the gun, it'd fire underneath the gun, maybe. So I'm going to go back to the sprite. And the origin, I'm going to set to middle center. Usually when I design games in GameMaker, if it's blocky and grid-like, I usually keep it as the origin being top left. If it's something that moves around, I usually keep the origin middle center. But it's whatever works best for you. Sometimes it does require a little bit more maths thinking if you have it in the center. But that's alright. We're not afraid of maths on this channel. In fact, we try and embrace it. But what are we going to do with the bullet? Well, first things first, we're going to go to add event. And we're going to add in an other. And we're going to add in an outside room event. So this event is triggered whenever the ball is outside the room. And the reason we're doing this is, as I will write in the description, is delete if outside room. Now, I'm not sure whether GameMaker Studio 2 does this, but I certainly know in older versions of GameMaker, everyone will be, just playing their game normally, and all of a sudden it starts slowing down. And I think, why is my game slowing down? What's wrong with it? And the reason being is it turns out that their bullet flew off the screen and carried on going. And because they're firing more and more bullets, that's taking up more and more RAM, more and more memory, and slowing the game down. So, what we're going to do is we're going to say, if the bullet is outside the room, we're going to do instance destroy self. And I'm hoping that's going to work, because that's how I'd have done it in the olden days. Do we need anything else? I don't think we need anything. I think that should just work. If it doesn't, there's no way of telling either, so it'll be interesting. But hopefully that means that our bullets won't just fly off the screen and carry on flying off forever and then dying. And then not dying, rather. And slowing down the memory and slowing everything to a crawl. So, we got that. Let's actually fire the thing now. And I don't mean make it redundant from a job. We're going to go to our player character object again. And whilst I could put in the step event, I'm not going to, because the step event is full of a load of gravity gubbins. So I'm just going to go add event. And I'm going to go for key pressed. What's going to be our shooting button? The letter E, maybe? That's usually used, isn't it? What would it be? I haven't played a game on a keyboard in such a long time, I can't even remember. Enter. Enter will do. Where on earth is enter? Enter? Digits, letters, function keys? Oh, it's there. Enter. The reason I'm using key press is... Actually, I won't go into that today. check the tutorial I linked in chat, because it does a very, very clear explanation of the difference between key check or key down and key pressed. But in key press enter, we're going to create an instance of our bullet object. Now, back in my day, it's not as nice and simple. You could just go ahead and use the phrase instance create. And that used to work. It worked in GameMaker it worked in GameMaker 8. It worked in GameMaker Studio 1. What happens, though, is it does not work in GameMaker Studio 2. And that's really annoying, because if you Google how to create instances in GameMaker, you always get results for instance create, which is something that belongs to old versions, whereas modern versions don't have that anymore. Instead, you have to create it on the right layer, or at the right depth. We're going to go instance underscore create underscore layer. And as it says down at the bottom of this, or at least it should do, as soon as I put the open bracket in, we need the X location to create it, which for us is going to be the X location of our player. So I can just put in the letter X. It needs the Y location, so I'm going to put in the letter Y. It needs the layer ID. I'm not really sure how to find out layer IDs, which is annoying. But I found if I just pop in 0, it works fine. Yeah, apparently. And we're going to put in the name of the object. Bullet OBJ, which is the one we're trying to create. Okay, so on key press enter, instance create at layer X, Y, 0, bullet object. Let's see what that looks like. Compile, compile, compile. Okay, so I'm playing the game as usual. Let's see what happens when I press enter. Ah, I've made a dot appear on the screen. What about now? Oh, no, I'm just doing a reverse Pac-Man now. That's not very helpful. But great if you want to do a sketching app or a paint app. So, what's currently happening is we haven't told our bullet to move yet. Oh, and our baddie's caught wind of us. Hello, have a bullet. So let's make this bullet move. Now, in the very same code, we are going to make some changes. First things first, we're going to work out which bullet we've just created, which is a little bit confusing. If I go to a room and show off an example, I've got 3 walls, and each of the walls is a different instance, and it has its own name. So one is called inst AD2217C, and one's called 68C, sorry, blah, 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 blah. It's numbers, it's gubbins. We need to work out which one gets created when we press enter, and a new one gets created every time we do that. So we need to keep track. And the way we're going to keep track of what's been created is we're going to do var new bullet equals. Okay, what that means is we're creating a variable, but a variable that only belongs to key press enter. We're calling that variable new bullet. And the cool thing about the instance create layer function is it gives you the name if you put the name in a variable. So if we create a layer, if we create an instance of bullet object, it'll say, okay, I've created inst underscore 7pq2j whatever, and it'll put it in the variable new bullet. And that means we can actually start controlling new bullet. And we do that using the with command. Say with new bullet. Now with is a really fascinating GameMaker feature that's a bit hard to explain. What with does is it allows you to start writing code for a different object. And I've just whacked the microphone. That's not good. Sorry, your ears. I'll send an apology note. But what with does is it takes an instance and does something with it. It allows you to write code for it. And you do that between two curly brackets. So, everything I write inside new bullet, everything I write within this with belongs to new bullet and not to the player character. So this belongs to new bullet now. So if I say speed equals something, or 100 or whatever, that belongs to new bullet. That's the new bullet speed, not the player's speed. But what we'll do first, we'll do direction equals... We'll just go direction equals 0 for now, because we haven't worked out our current direction. And we'll set the speed equal to 5. It might be a slow-moving bullet, but it'll still do something. So direction equals 0, speed equals 5. And later, we're going to come back and choose the right direction. But let's give it a go. I need some sort of relaxing music every time that takes to load up. So here's my player. Watch what happens when I press enter. There goes a bullet. Pew. Pew. Pew, pew, pew. And yeah, we can follow them off screen. And hopefully, as soon as they reach the end of the world, they'll disappear. But how do we go in the other direction? Well, this is all a gameplay thing. Oh, sorry, the baddie is slowly coming towards me. Whilst the baddie does that, I'll explain what we're talking about. We got two options. We can have it so... I say two options. There's so many different options. There's... I mean... it depends what kind of platformer you want. So if you want a platformer where you aim with the mouse, we'd want to set the bullet to go towards the mouse. If you want a platformer that... if you want to do something else, one thing you can do is remember the last direction your player was facing and fire in that direction. And it all depends on what you're trying to get out of the game. What is your game designed like? We're going to go for the simpler one. We're going to go for the last direction we faced. Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking about the best way to go ahead and do that. We need to keep track of the last direction that the player faced. So, of course, we're going to need a variable for that. Okay. And here, we can't call it direction, because direction already exists in GameMaker. Let's instead call it facing, because our player can be facing left or right. Can we do it as a string? Let's do it as a string. Yeah, let's do it as a string. Okay, it's not the most efficient, but it might make our code easier to read for ourselves. Over here, in the step event, using the code from that tutorial, we're going to... Sorry, let me actually clear up this screen because it's all over the place. We're going to add a little bit of code underneath movement. Because what movement is doing is it's working out which direction we're facing. So we can ask if movement equals I'm just thinking, I think it's -1 for left. You know what, we'll try it, and then if we're wrong, we'll come fix it. If movement equals -1, what we will do is we will go... Come on, brain. It's only 10 minutes to go of the stream. You can manage it. Oh, yeah. Facing equals... And let's say left. Else, if oh, I need the thing in the else if. Gosh, my brain has just completely disappeared today. I was trying to type in mavement. That's not a word. Movement equals 1. Facing equals right. We'll see if this works. I have a suspicion it might. I'm hoping it might. If not, we'll come revisit it. It's fine to make mistakes. So if movement is -1, we say facing is left. If movement is 1, we say facing is right. I could probably do that in a much more efficient way, but I'm not going to. We're going to go back to our player character, and we're going to go for the enter now. And here, we can say if facing equals left. When you take the direction. There is such a more efficient way of doing this. We could just make the movement an instance variable and just copy that, but it's too late now. I've written half the stuff. If my game were running slowly, I could come back and fix this, but it's such a small difference. I don't think it will make too much of a problem. Such a small bit of code, rather. I don't think it will make too much of a problem. I will change one thing, though. In the create, we set facing equals to nothing first. I'll set it to default to right. Because with our code, if it's not left or right, then nothing will happen. And if nothing will happen, the player will think something's broken about the game. So let's see if this works. If it doesn't, I'll take that as a sign that I'm too tired and I should stop. Does it work? So, I've last moved right. It doesn't work. What's not set before reading it? Facing's not set before reading it. I know why. I know why. It's because I used the with, isn't it? So because I'm using the with, facing here does not apply to the player character, which has facing. It's looking for facing a new bullet, which doesn't exist. So what we'll do is we'll take all that code, remove the with completely, and we'll put the code back in. We'll keep facing as is. And for direction, and speed, we'll do new bullet dot. New bullet dot. New bullet dot. And I believe that should fix the issue. Let's see. There we are. So we've moved right, which means we fire right. Now let's see if we fire left once we've moved left. So I'm moving left now. Okay, let's fire. And it goes left. Nice. And we'll finish off with one last thing today. We're going to go to our secret enemy object. We're going to add event, collision, objects, bullet object, instance, destroy, other. So this will destroy the bullet. And instance, destroy, self. This will destroy the enemy. Let's give it a go. Okay, let's see if we can fire on our baddie. And poof, it's gone. There we are. So, I didn't get round to doing everything that I wanted to today. I wanted to make it a little bit pretty, do some art, but we got somewhere pretty good. We got an enemy that moves towards us. We've got a way of defending ourselves. And yeah, I'm not too happy. Poof, it's gone. Sorry. Yeah, so, in any case, I hope you've enjoyed. I do thoroughly recommend that tutorial series. It's excellent. It's over here if you want to see it. The link is in the live chat. And as the front door slams to the building I live in, farewell. Have a very lovely evening. Enjoy the good weather whilst you can. Don't spend all of it indoors on GameMaker. And, yeah, enjoy your evening. I'm off to a dinner to celebrate a wedding, so that's good news. Makes a lovely end of a day of streaming and marking exams. I'm rambling now. Bye, everyone.